climax of an open season for UDA, an equal opportunity shootout that spared no one. Not the president, not the deputy president, not the MCAs, elevated or not. And yes, not even the Communist Party of China's latest visitor. We take advantage of an apparent interference by a prayer to visit the UDA battlefield. An incident. It is the full landscape edition here on the News Gang.
Look at me, Kenyans. Look at me again. I must lead from the front. As I tell others, we live within our means. In fact, my plan is that in 3 years, we must have a balanced budget. We cannot continue to have a budget that has a deficit, that before you begin, you have to borrow.
Does that end the debate, or does it just put more fuel to the fire? Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's good to have you, and it's good to have you with us as well. The hashtag is NewsGang. This was the president getting full trimmings, full state honors, traveling to the U.S., huge business delegation. It was the full shebang.
Right. It's a visit that had really attracted a lot of attention, especially from Kenyans themselves. And if you had to look at even the sort of coverage that he got, never mind that there's certain disagreements on the extent of and the fairness of airtime sharing involved in all the way from Atlanta, meeting the Kenyan community right there, speaking to the concerns of Kenyans there. But then when it gets now to the involvement between the government of Kenya and the government of the US and the many conversations that have been held, looking out for information coming from there. So it's quite substantive in terms of some of those issues that have been spoken about. And last night, the Cabinet Secretary for Defense, Aden Duale, was here speaking about a bit of it. And I've seen also a statement coming from State House this evening talking about the donations that have come of aircraft and the sort of cooperation that continues to happen. So it's also a defining moment. Yes, the celebration of 60 years of official friendly relations between the two countries, but also it comes at a time that what the United States government is asking for, whether it's in the questions of that Kenyans are becoming hopeless in the combating corruption, then there are many questions that have to be asked because, yes, the president of the U.S. is talking about the two friendly nations that are brought together by shared values. So those values have to be unpacked and say, yes, this continues. It is quite a significant visit of the president to the U.S.
Kenya has said about that visit. And I remember when we were trying to get information about what exactly were the issues that were raised. You talk about corruption, you talk about human rights. There's even something about investigative journalism in there. And we got information about it from the White House in Washington, D.C. There was a tweet that was shared by our Foreign Affairs PS early on during the visit, I think on May 23rd, and he gave us a bit of the key outcomes of the state visit to the United States, giving all those details, human rights, corruption, and all those issues. But then now, when we talk about how big that visit was, Gituku has touched on it, the significance of it, arriving in the U.S., the Atlanta visit, then going to Washington, D.C., the state visit, the photo ops, the dinner that was held, I think, on the lawns of the White House. Even the music there was music that our president and the First Lady love, which was gospel music. We had expected maybe that when they come back home, what was agreed from our side, like what the Kenyan version of it all was, would be given as much prominence in terms of big deal, all platforms. I remember when the press conference was going on, it was all over international media. But then now, what came out of it? What exactly came out of it? It's a lot, I'm sure, but we don't know half of it. And I think that maybe there's more that needs to be said.
Yeah, and I think, there's the tendency for us to call these goodies, but that really, the framing of that needs to be, different. Some of those might be donations, fine, but there's others that are also, loans that we are signing. The fine print in some of these things, things like being, declared a non-NATO ally. These are some of the things that need to be unpacked. I mean, it might sound great, but, when you mention things like NATO, then you know what happened with Ukraine and Russia. But fine print of these details?
Yes, let me start with that categorization of Kenya as a major non-NATO ally. It's a big deal, actually, quite a big deal, because the listing of such countries are done by the President of the United States. It's called designation. And he actually has to alert the Congress 30 days before he takes that action of designating a country as a major non-NATO ally. And this one is in their procedures also. It is in writing. It's not a roadside declaration. And it's a small club right now of about, Kenya becomes the 19th country to be a member of the, to be designated as a major non-NATO ally. Now, the finer print in that is it places a country in the space where it can enter into defense conversations with the Department of Defense in the U.S. especially. There is the whole question of the sale of arms, for example. The United States Congress has regulations as to which country, who can buy arms. It's not an open market. And when you're designated as a major non-NATO ally, then it has an implication on your status when it comes to the Arms Export Control Act that controls the sale of arms in the United States to other countries. So it's a big deal. And in Africa, there are only 2 other African countries that are in this list of major non-NATO allies, and that is Egypt and Morocco. So those are the only 2 countries so Kenya becomes the 3rd one. But I want to come to the optics of the whole trip as well when it comes to the foreign policy playground. And, with the United States, the globe is the foreign policy playground. It is only peaceful nations. Ethiopia had turmoil, a long civil war, dictatorship under Mengistu Haile Mariam, so it was considered more Moscow-leaning. Kenya was then seen in those strategic terms. But over the years, since the collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1991 and the end of Cold War, Kenya is actually the darling of the East, a progressive leader who has led Uganda to peace and all that. And then there was Paul Kagame at some point sitting as well, Paul Kagame of Rwanda, as the next favorite. So I think it's Kenya's 8 choppers that State House spokesman Hussein Mohammed confirmed earlier will be coming in September. There's another set of 8 helicopters, light utility helicopters that will be coming in January.
24.
150 APCs, that's armored personnel carriers, that are mine resistant. So this should be an improvement. Or as the tentacles of the American power are all over the place. It'll be about military bases sometimes, and maybe, who knows, are we going to have a military base around here? Currently, the U.S. has a military base in Djibouti, or had a military base in Djibouti. And these are very strategic bases. So these are some of the questions that Kenyans ought to be asking. That.
I have a question about the role of China.
Actually, officially, non-aligned.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to be aligned
not
to
east, neither east
either
nor
side.
west. Yeah.
And you heard President Ruto saying, no, we're not facing east, we're not facing west. We are facing forward. That is the original quote by Kwame Nkrumah, debts. Chinese debts, and very shortly, debts from other places. So that keeps us quite busy. So it still serves us better to stay in the middle road.
So I'd like us to see if we can listen to that. You know, the first one where President William Ruto talks about all the manner of figures and how big the plane was and what it cost to get him from here to the United States.
I can spend 200 million. There is no way. In fact, let me disclose here that it costed the Republic of Kenya less than 10 million. I am not a madman. Some friends told me, how much do you want to pay? I said, I'm not ready to pay more than 20 million. They said, bring 10 million, we will give you the plane.
It's good to have friends. You need to reevaluate your friends, Sam.
Yeah, you know, it's
Ukonangapi, yani?
I actually wanted to say that. Why did you do that?
Unataka kwenda wapi? Ukonangapi wewe sema?
Yeah.
Tuwezi kosana bei.
But I mean, admitting that to be 200 million shillings are not accurate. He even says that this debate now needs to close, which is fine. I mean, it's what he feels because obviously he knows better than anyone else. But I'm also concerned when it became apparent that the president was going to travel to the United States. I'm sure a team sat down to craft the agenda and also what it was going to take in the planning stage. How much did the presidency plan to spend on this particular trip? Who was supposed to secure that transport? Because I'm also concerned about, you've seen about free samples as a mode of marketing. When free samples come, they're inviting you to make a purchase at some point. So this particular friendship, what was the intention? But then again, so that is a particular question that we will want to know. Kenyans may want to know what is the deal in it. So that, did you get an answer?
14.2.
14.2%. I was just 5. Oh, 14% is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's also the amount of taxes against
isn't
GDP.
Yeah. Yes.
But I digress. So what is the deal here?
Yeah.
So friends assisting, and it's fine. Is that the official policy of the government now, that any time you want to travel for a long-haul trip, hopefully it will report on specific expenditure? And this is good so that Kenyans are also able to plan, because we are told we have to tighten our belts, that we have to live within our means, that we are cutting down on expenditure. Indeed, the president himself has said that in the current conversation on the next financial year, budget 2024-2025, it is the taxpayer that footed the bill.
And what role did they play, you know, specifically?
Yeah.
So you've got these people who went, what did they go to do? What they, you know, we know there were trade expos and that sort of thing. So that's an important thing. But, you know, on this issue of you know, what it cost, what this plane cost, you know, the story evolved. So, of course, it started off with the hullabaloo from Kenyans and the questions they were asking. And then upon his arrival, he made, an explanation on X. And then, you know, vaguely and, you know, mentioned the national carrier. And then today, he talked about the friends and he talked about the negotiation. And then later on, there was a statement now revealing the identity of and, you know, Sam, like you say, these are painful questions, but they are accountability questions. And it's always what you give versus what you get in return. And I doubt that with the president saying that that should put an end to the debate, that it actually will. I mean, I think there's going to be more questions. As you can see, even from the statement that he made, you know, during the prayer breakfast today, people continued to ask questions. And to be fair, you know, the president cannot end the debate. You know, Kenyans will end the debate when they are well and truly satisfied with the answers they receive.
Yeah, and when he was in the US, Yvonne, you talk about when it started in the US. And then you talk about this is what the optics are, the conversation around it in the country. Then he comes home and you talk about all these reactions that have come. Mtu kusema ni kama whiplash. There's a statement, there's a tweet, there's the soundbite during the prayer breakfast trying to explain yourself. And of course, a matter of accountability. Because of the office he holds, it's important that such things are said. But Gituku, I think the first time we heard that there was going to be a presidential visit, if I'm not mistaken, may have been about February this year, and it was asked him, utalipa nini?
So he had a discussion with the UAE about a trip that he was making to the United States?
I don't know. It just has a lot of questions in there.
Actually, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Because he was going to Kenya Airways or to KQ because these are the
that are given by the president. First of all, it sounds sad when it starts sounding like it was a bus stage conversation where you say that bus, no, that is too expensive. Oh, my friends heard that I'm going. This is a president of the, you know, it sounds like a parking lot conversation. That's not a presidential trip.
Linus. Bei ya jioni tutakutana.
Yes.
Unasemaje? Mimi uko na ngapi?
Niko na 10. Buy Kenya, build Kenya. Don't bring in furniture from outside. Here was a moment, and here is the president talking almost in an adversarial way of the national airline. You're actually putting it down. Putting disaster. Now, let's go to the second bit now where, yes, it gets to get the United Arab Emirates or friends to get him to the US. Here is the irony. There is a senator in the United States, the senator of New Jersey. His name is Bob Menendez, who was indicted by the Senate, basically, for taking gifts from a foreign country. And the country happens to be Qatar, not far from where we got the right now, is what he was to give in return. And it was established that what he was supposed to give is to take actions to the benefit of Qatar. Naturally. So, can this be replicated here? What is President Ruto supposed to give back to his United Arab Emirates friends? Take actions to the benefit of the United Arab Emirates? There's some really serious casualness around the whole thing. And by the way, it's not just at presidential level. Donald Kipkorir earlier on, and I just want to quickly get his Twitter there. He says, just wondering, was the president advised by State House legal team that it may not be proper, legal, constitutional, or statutory for a president? These laws that, you know, we passed as a country. Chapter 6. Yeah, that chapter 6. You're actually not supposed to conduct yourself this way. You have to really carry yourself in a way that is accountable to the public. So Kenyans are asking questions, and they're asking the right questions. But there's something I also pick from the president. And he knows there have never been consequences. Shillings. And remember, there's never been any consequences for the Aror Kimorer saga, which lost public money, but we are told only 7 billion. And remember, the president says, and vehicles to the US. When President Obama came here,
he came with his.
Yes, and this is now, you know, age set. I come from a community of age groups where your size and age set also matters. They are not our peers when it comes to economic capacity, military capacity.
Recently, the leader of majority at the National Assembly said the following. As we consider the next few years' budgets, let us consider the modernization of our military equipment, including the aircrafts that are used not just in the military, but also in the police, including the presidential jet.
Yes.
So we may have to buy a presidential jet in the next